The key for human health and vitality is the gut. Because as you'll learn, it's for mental health, physical health, and organ health. So we got to make sure we've got a healthy gut. Now, one interesting thing that I've learned testing hundreds and hundreds of people with genetics is that everybody has different gut genetics. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Mark Iron. I'm a certified nutritional consultant, and I've had the great fortune to work with a lot of health experts, functional doctors, clinical nutritionists. So I want to give you the best that I've learned so far about how to heal the gut, how to test if you've got an issue. And this video should go for probably 40, maybe 50 minutes. We'll just see how things go. So with the first thing that we really have to understand is that our beautiful gut here, it has a brain. It's got hundreds and hundreds of millions of neurons, and it talks to every organ in our body. So none more important than our moneymaker to increase our earning potential and our vitality, our brain. So when you've got a sick gut, our brain suffers. Not you, it's your brain that suffers. So we suffer emotionally because it drives stress, anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, cognitive decline like brain fog. And then you've also got autism, and it's going to drive IBS. And then our hormones are disrupted. And our heart suffers as well. And we get thrombosis, thick, sludgy blood, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, high blood pressure, and then the lungs. So asthma, seasonal allergies, wheezing, coughing, things like that. And then the liver, which, as you'll find, the liver and the pancreas and the gallbladder are key players in human health. And it's speaking to all of these organ systems. And then we're also talking about the pancreas, which it speaks to. So the pancreas releases enzymes to digest your food, really key there. And then the bones, if you don't have great gut health, you get osteoporosis because the bones demineralize. So they go into osteoclastic activities, and you can't build them back up. So you can't regrow and regenerate your bone. And then the muscle, of course, like a lot of people are pushing hard at the gym. They're eating the protein. They think they're eating right, but their gut's a bit sick. So they have very few gains and they stall a lot. But the problem also becomes is that sarcopenia can set in when you're 40, 50, 60, and you become very frail very quickly there. And your gut has a brain and it degenerates. So it can get to a point where, you can't regenerate the brain neurons in your gut there. So you're never really going to have great anything. So you really want to be on top of this. Of course, the skin axis. So you can get acne, cirrhosis, atopic dermatitis, and also alopecia, hair loss, and also wrinkles and advanced skin aging. So discoloration of the skin, not cool. And then the gonads, so testes in dudes and the ovaries in ladies. So think about that. Fertility tanks along with sex hormone production also tanks, kidney and gallbladder. And also one of the most important hormones or organs in our system, the old thyroid axis there, because it boosts metabolism. It's what gives your whole metabolism a boost there. And then here is a very close diagram of the gut testes axis, legends out there. So fertility and testosterone tanks. So certainly we have to really pay attention to the gut. So I've got 3 short videos here just to show the problem that a lot of people face and they've got no clue, because what you don't know, you don't know. So the first video here is from my good friend, Dr. J. Check this out. This is cool.
It's not thriving. It's definitely suboptimal. It's frustrating, honestly. I mean, especially on the topic of testosterone, because if your testosterone goes down, just your health in general goes down. So that opens the door to a bunch of prescription drugs.
Yeah.
And so the pharma companies are very excited about keeping your testosterone down from a financial perspective.
Exactly.
As a business model, it's a good idea for them.
Interesting, to say the least. And this is Dr. Daddis, and he's a functional doctor, PhD, DHSC, DCMS, MMSC, FCAN, very smart individual. And this is what he says about anxiety and depression.
They get severe brain inflammation when they eat it. They can even have their blood-brain barrier, gut barrier breakdown. They can set up the stage for neurological autoimmunity. They can decrease blood flow to their brain, As their brain gets inflamed, their messenger synaptic pathways become slower, and they just don't function well. And they walk in the healthcare system and they get diagnosed with chronic depressive disorder or chronic anxiety disorder or some other name. And they get told they don't have celiac disease if they're even tested that way. And then they continue to have problems with it. So lots of papers have been published where they see white matter lesions throughout the brain. This is, for example, another study.
So that's gluten sensitivity. We've tested hundreds and hundreds of people, and over 90% have some form of gluten sensitivity. Maybe not full-blown celiac, but it's destroying your brain, your organs. It's really detrimental, especially to your gut there. And this is what Dr. Canberry said to me the last time I spoke to him. Check this out.
All those things are symptoms of low testosterone, and there's a long list of prescription medications that you might be taking from your doctor, your doctor that you trust, that could actually be plummeting your testosterone levels.
I'm not going to drive into the mechanisms of action, but they even say on the warning labels on these drugs that they're going to lower libido. Well, you're lowering T. So we don't want to be here. We want to stack the odds in our favor, and it really starts with gut health, as you can now appreciate. Now, as Dr. Daddis said there, you can be tested by your physician for celiac disease, and it comes back negative, but it could actually be positive, right? Because all they test when they test you for celiac disease, basically gliadin alpha and tissue transglutinase 2 in the gut. But you can have celiac skin, tissue transglutinase 3 for the skin, so it's attacking your skin cells. Tissue transglutinase 3 in the brain, so it's attacking your central nervous system, and also your brain. So this is the research coming out. So celiac brain here, so you can see the white lesions that Daddis was talking about. But, after a certain amount of time being on a gluten-free diet, it corrects itself. So it's directly attacking your brain through tissue transglutinase 6, and they don't test for this. So Alzheimer's show up and they say, oh, it's idiopathic. We don't know how it happens. Here's one example of how it can happen. And we've tested hundreds and hundreds of people. Over 90% have some form of gluten sensitivity. So here's an example of these genes right here. So this person's got okay genes. I've seen better than that. And this person, he has for gut health really bad genes. And there's a lot of gluten risk there. And then here's the celiac risk here. And this individual was tested by his physician, I think 4 years before he started working with us. And they said, you don't have celiac disease, but he's got a lot of celiac risk there. Lots and lots of celiac risk. So it depends who you speak to, and that's the point. So that's why we work with functional medical professionals. So let's talk about the north to south model. So this is how it all works. When I did my certificate in nutrition, the doctors in that group said, it'd be really good investment if you purchased a few courses from Dr. Daddis, and that's what I did. I did the gut course, food sensitivities, the immune one, and brain health. I did all those courses, and this is how we think through it. So you've got to think of it as a north to south model, and we're going to talk about phase 1 and phase 2. And on the second video in this series, we'll do phase 3, which is all about the microbiome, which is a GI map. What you don't measure, legends, you don't know. And we'll talk about that on the third video. Now, this is Dr. Daddis just speaking about this model and why a lot of people fail when it comes to gut health. And we know how important it is now for human health, everything.
Is when we look at why a lot of patients fail is they don't start north to south. They just start right at the south. They start right at the microbiome. So the concept of north to south is you make sure each of these steps are evaluated first. That's why we do the questionnaire form, ask questions about chewing, swallowing, motility, stomach enzyme production, hydrochloric acid production, pancreatic enzyme production, gallbladder production, the ability to have proper motility, making sure there's no tight junction issues, and making sure that the microbiome is healthy and working. Those are all important steps that have to take place in order, like a domino effect, in order for the gastrointestinal tract to work well. Skipping the north to south model is guaranteed to cause patient failure. So now let's go through each of these.
So this is why it has to work. We have to enhance digestion, because if you don't, it causes an immune response and inflammation, and you'll never be able to heal your microbiome there. And then we've also got to look at the intestinal barrier. So I'm going to give you tests for these as we progress to see if you've got, all the right stuff there. So strap your seatbelts on and let's get into this. So the first thing we have to appreciate is that it all starts with chewing and digestion. I know it's not sexy, but if you want to get your gut healthy, we have to understand all of these key concepts and principles. So when we start to chew, we release enzymes like lipases, amylases to start digesting fats and carbohydrates. And then when it goes to the gut, we have to trigger rest and digest. Otherwise, it's all for naught. And I'll talk about that on the next slide, which is why you want to really pay attention to how much choline you're getting in your diet. And towards the end of this video, I'll show you where you can get choline to make sure you're getting enough to trigger rest and digest. And then when the food goes in the stomach, you have to have the right pH levels, stomach acid, to break down proteins from, proteins into polypeptides, into single amino acids, and enough stomach acid then triggers the release of the pancreas to release enzymes and the gallbladder to contract and release bile, which is absolutely huge, as you'll see. This schematic here, I'll just talk a little bit about it, but this is the autonomic nervous system. So you got stress and then you've got rest and digest. So when we're eating food, we want to be in rest and digest. If you're rush eating, stress eating, emotionally eating, then you're over here in sympathetic tone, so you can't digest your food. And you're also releasing glucose as glycogen, from glycogen in the liver to glucose in the bloodstream. And that actually causes AGEs, advanced glycation end products, to also further destroy the gut there. And it reduces peristalsis here, which mobilizes your gut in waves so you can digest your food. So when you trigger rest and digest, and you've got to ensure you got enough acetylcholine, because if you don't get enough choline, you can't have enough acetylcholine to trigger rest and digest. Now, from Dr. Daddis, I've got his book linked below, Why My Brain Isn't Working, but these are the symptoms of a low choline diet. So choline does a lot of things, but two main things that it does is it creates acetylcholine to trigger rest and digest, number one. Number two, phosphatidylcholine here. So phosphatidylcholine is needed for liver detox and to absorb fats, right, from the gallbladder. So have a look at all those symptoms there. You might want to pause that and go over those and see if you've got any of those. So pretty important that we get enough choline. So the reason why choline is really important for detox and to absorb your foods is it is the main phospholipid in bile. So what happens is your liver does detox, phase 1, phase 2. So it's getting rid of estrogens, chemicals, all of these things here, all of these pollutants. And it dumps it into the gallbladder, then into the colon. So we excrete it in number 2. So if you don't get enough choline, you won't have enough phosphatidylcholine there to trigger that whole system to detox. So that's huge in and of itself. So let's dive a little bit deeper into phase 1, phase 2, liver detox. So yeah, liver's working really hard to get rid of all of these toxins here. I won't drive into that, but you get the idea. We live in a very toxic, chemical-laden world. So the first phase is the P450 enzymes there, cytochromes, and they need a lot of vitamins and minerals here. And you can see that it also needs the master antioxidant, glutathione. And then that goes to phase 2. So in phase 2, you need to make sure you're getting enough protein in your diet. So if you're on a low protein diet, you don't have enough of these raw amino acids to detox and make glutathione, because glutathione is simply 3 amino acids. You've got methionine, cysteine, and glycine. And you also need taurine and glycine for liver detox. So if you're not getting enough of that, you can't detox. And when you can't detox, it puts a lot of oxidative stress on your whole body. And you can't get estrogen to healthy levels, because that's how we detox estrogen there. Now, a really important consideration is that I'll talk about this in the second video through a GI map there. So this is part of a GI map. And when we have a look at the GI map, we're really drilling into beta-glucuronidase. Now you can see here, this person's got a really high and this person's got kind of low. Now, if you've got really high, guess what happens on the next slide here? So phase 1, the cytochromes, the P450s are starting the detox process in the liver. Phase 2, conjugation in the liver. and then it empties it through the gallbladder, into the bile, into the colon there for phase 3. So the important thing to understand is if you've got really high beta-glucuronidase, it unpacks the conjugated, back here, the conjugation of all these chemicals and estrogens in the colon for round 2. So your liver's got to do it all over again. Now, if it's too low, that's not a good thing either. Now, the remarkable thing is when you identify where your beta-glucuronidase is, and I'll speak about this in a second video there through a GI map there, you can understand how to get it back in the butter zone there, because if it's low, all you need to do is make sure you got enough of these Bacteroides and say Staphylococcus here and colostrum there, and that's going to push it back up into the green zone. Now, if it's too high, you can take a supplement called beta-glucuronidase, calcium deglucarate. So that actually brings that back down the green. So if you're too high, it's a really simple fix, but if it's too low, it's going to take a bit of time with the right supplementation to get it back in the green. Another consideration with liver detox are mold toxins. So you can see here this person, positive, positive, positive. This one here in particular is nasty, Zerolone, so it's called ZEA, because it has a strong affinity to the estrogen receptor, so it mimics estrogen. And this person on this panel has 3 times over. So that one thing alone is going to mimic estrogen, and you're always going to have low testosterone when you've got ZEA in the system. So let's talk about where that is. But the first thing I want to speak about before I show you where it is and how to get rid of it, importantly, the digestive system. It so screws up your gut and your digestive system, reproductive toxicity, immune toxicity, and metabolic toxicity. And it's also a potent estrogen mimic. Now, where do we get it? Well, basically, it comes from grains. I'll actually show you this slide right here. So a lot of times the farmers, they store their grains and it gets a bit of mold. So this Zerolone, ZEA, ZEN, ZEL, so all of these ZEs, it's in oats, peanuts, the water supply, sorghum, rice, barley, soybeans, wheat, and maize. So basically they also feed that to the animals that we eat, and then we get a second dose of it. So you've got to be very careful about getting this into your system. So the question now becomes, what does it actually do to testosterone production there? So this was a meta-analysis of male reproductive toxicity with ZEA. So in the testes there, it actually causes apoptosis, cell death. So your testes are literally shrinking. Your antioxidant capacity goes down. Reactive oxygen species goes up and your testosterone tanks. So you can see how that's a big, big problem. So how do you detox this? Well, when you've got a healthy gut right here, it's detoxing a lot of this mold by default. And you've only got 2 voids there. So basically activated charcoal is going to fill in the void. So you can see how a healthy gut is a long step in the right direction. So that's how you're going to detox. Now, you want to make sure that you're working with a healthcare professional before you start using these binders, because it could backfire on you, and you've got to take it at the right time of day. If you want more information on that, drop a comment below. I'm more than happy to help you out with how to detox if you're at this place. Now, let's talk about the north to south model. So what we've talked about so far are these points here, how important it is. So what we're going to talk about, and we're going to show you, I'll show you a test here as well. We have to get the right stomach acid to trigger this whole system to work. And don't forget, we need enough choline to trigger rest and digest as well. So make sure you get enough choline. And I'll talk about that towards the end. So basically, you want to get your stomach acid around about 1.5 to 2. Some people say even up to 3 is okay. So if you've got enough stomach acid, you'll start to digest your proteins. So basically the proteins, not just meat, we're also talking about plant proteins. The stomach acid triggers the whole protein digestion system. So it breaks it into peptides, polypeptides, and then into single amino acids. And this is how our body accepts them. If they go into the bloodstream as proteins and peptides, that can cause an immune response, and that can cause fatigue, anxiety, all of those things there. And it can also bind to tissues and cause tissue destruction. So you can see how important stomach acid is. So right here, stomach acid, the right amount. What it does is triggers, not only does it help you start to digest your proteins here into single amino acids, but it triggers the pancreas to release enzymes to digest your food even further. And then it also triggers the brush border enzymes, and then importantly, the gallbladder to contract. And when I talk about the gallbladder, in a little bit from here, you'll see how important the gallbladder is. It's absolutely foundational. You have to have a healthy gallbladder there. So I'll just play this quick video from Dr. Daddis just to really emphasize how important proper stomach acid is. Just check this out.
Now, hydrochloric acid is really important. This is one of the first steps, one of the early steps of the north to south model, because it's used to break down protein. And the other key thing is that hydrochloric acid in the stomach changes the acidity of the small intestine to then trigger pancreatic enzyme release and also gallbladder contraction. So sometimes people have symptoms of low hydrochloric acid, low pancreatic enzyme function, and inability to digest fats. And as soon as they start taking hydrochloric acid, these pancreatic and gallbladder symptoms go away, because once they get enough acidity in their stomach to activate their small intestine reflexes, working in this north to south model, their symptoms resolve. So you get.
So I'll talk about the symptoms in a moment, but what about the consequences of not breaking your proteins into peptides and then into amino acids, where our body's going to thrive and we can actually absorb them? So what happens is these undigested food particles can trigger food sensitivities, inappropriate immune food sensitivities. Now, there's a video link below, and I did a whole video about food sensitivities and how to test for that and fix that. But in a nutshell there, when you've got a sick gut, you can also have what's called intestinal permeability there. So basically, we want tight junctions. These food particles can't go in. But a lot of people have got this in these junctions are open, so these food particles go in, either as proteins or peptides right there. So the food goes into the bloodstream, and then this is what happens. The immune system, the interesting thing is they've got memories. These T cells have a memory, and they remember that this food is an issue because it should be an amino acid, whether that's a meat or whether that's a plant protein. So as they come in, we call them antigens, and they got these specialized cells called dendritic cells and macrophages. And because it shouldn't be there, we should be fully digesting. So that's what phase 1 is all about. It launches this attack, histamine goes up, and everything starts coming down. The immune system goes up. So your body's financing wars it can't pay for. And the older you get, the worse it becomes. So again, I've done a video all about that. So here are some of the symptoms of not being able to digest your protein. So right here, basically, you got a lot of belching and burping. So a lot of people think that's no harm, no foul. It kind of is. You shouldn't be doing a lot of that after meals. Offensive breath, and also feeling really full after big protein meals. So we're talking about a big protein meal there. And bloating within about 30 to 60 minutes. So when we ask our clients, we want to get a score of 0 all the way through there. So it just depends on your symptoms there. Now, the way that you can test for stomach acid is what's called a bicarb soda test. And a lot of functional doctors recommend that you do this just to test the waters, so to speak, to see how much stomach acid you're actually you're producing there. So we want a really acidic stomach to digest our foods and trigger that whole system. So basically what you want to do is get a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda and about 4 or 6 ounces of cold water first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. Now, if you burp within 30 seconds, too much stomach acid. And this is very rare, too much stomach acid. And then 30 seconds to 1.5 minutes, I believe is ideal, but up to 3 minutes, you're going to be okay. Your stomach, you should have enough stomach acid there. But when it's past 3 minutes, that's a problem. And past 5 minutes, that's a very big problem. So just to sum up what the stomach acid is going to do, it's going to help you digest your proteins there. And it neutralizes pathogens like bacteria, salmonella, things like that. And it triggers the release of enzymes from the pancreas, and it triggers the gallbladder to do its work, to detox and absorb fats, like fat-soluble vitamins, essential fatty acids, things like that. So that is how important digesting your proteins are. So it's not just meat, it's also plant proteins as well. And plant proteins are really difficult for us to break down. We can still do it, providing we've got a healthy gut. So what are the main causes of hypochlorhydria? That's just low stomach acid. So basically medications like antacids. So, a lot of times we're told to take these antacids to lower stomach acid, and that's not the problem. The problem is we're not digesting our food. So it's sitting there, it's not going through the system. So we're burping and the stomach acid comes up to the esophagus and we get that burning. So you take these antacids and it lowers stomach acid even further, so you can't digest your food. So the symptoms go away. So you take this every time you eat and you get that reflux there, but it's not fixing the problem, and that's a big problem. Now, according to Datus, H. pylori is the biggest one. So I'll play this video from Datus just to really drive into the problems with hypochlorhydria, their low stomach acid.
Now, there's many causes of hypochlorhydria why you may not produce hydrochloric acid. We focus on the number one cause, which is H. pylori infection. Antacids, for example, shut down hydrochloric acid. Hypothyroidism, if you're hypothyroid, that can shut down your hydrochloric acid. If you haven't had your thyroid checked, you want to make sure that's evaluated. And then you'll see on this list dysautonomia, traumatic brain injury, brain degeneration, gut degeneration. That happens when the nervous system starts to degenerate or starts to dysfunction, or the brainstem starts to dysfunction. You should know that when people get older, when we all get older, we start to lose our enzyme production. We start to lose our autonomic functions. So it's not uncommon for us, once we get past age 60, 70, to need hydrochloric acid because our cells are not as efficient. They start to degenerate away. Now, if you see a person that needs hydrochloric acid, if you're young, if you're a 20-year-old, 30-year-old, and you need hydrochloric acid, that's most likely an H. pylori infection. So just be aware of those.
So apparently worldwide, it's about 50%. So some countries are like 30%, 20%. Some countries are really high. And the average worldwide is about 50% there. And I'll show you how to test this in a moment. But another thing that's very interesting to understand is that these proteins, whether it's from meat or whether it's a plant protein, when you're not digesting your food properly, you've probably got a bit of gut dysbiosis. And we'll talk about in the second video there with the GI map on the second video there. But basically, you got the wrong bacteria, and guess what they do to your proteins? Well, they start to ferment it and digest it, so you're going to get a lot of burping, right? But they also generate excessive amounts of potentially toxic compounds like ammonia and amines there. So ammonia goes up, which is really toxic, and the kidneys have to work really hard, so urea goes up. I've seen this on a few of my new clients with their kidney function there. Once you correct the gut, this kind of normally normalizes there. So you can see how important the stomach acid is to, basically everything that your body needs to do to correctly digest your foods there. All right. So let's talk about the second one here, which is digesting starches and sugars. So what's interesting to understand is that, some people have a difficulty digesting fibers and starches there. So they get a lot of bloating. They also, basically have flatulence as well and burping. So when you're eating these foods like rice, beans, fruit, and vegetables and fibers, you can get bloating within 1 or 2 hours after meals, tenderness in the left side rib cage after your meals there. But the problem that we've learned testing hundreds and hundreds of people with genetics is some people have what's called low pain sensitivity. So you might even feel this tenderness, right? You mightn't feel gut issues. So you don't even know this is even going on. And another gene that really impacts how you digest your starches and sugars there is this gene right here. So if you're homozygous, and a few of our clients are, you have got a really big propensity, 3 to 3.8 times increased risk of irritable bowel disease with this one gene alone. So, a lot of things play into an optimal gut. So you can see how gut genetics plays into it too. So that's pretty interesting. Now, the third one here is quite simply digesting your fats. And that all starts with the gallbladder and enough choline in your diet, taurine and glycine as well. So when you're not digesting your fats, you can get abdominal bloating and distress after fatty meals. Like if you're taking fish oil pills and you burp them up and you feel that fishy burp, then you've got some issues there. Again, the pain as well. And when you've got really bad issues with your gallbladder not contracting, you can get nausea after a big fatty meal and also vomiting as well there. So, and don't forget about the pain sensitivity there. So you mightn't even know you've got an issue. So pretty important to understand. Now, the final thing that I'll talk about with the gallbladder is absolutely huge because it triggers, and when you release bile from your gallbladder there. It triggers nuclear receptors, which are DNA receptors, to do all of this. I'll just run through a few. You can actually pause the screen here. But bile acid homeostasis, right? Lipid metabolism, fat metabolism, glucose homeostasis, which is absolutely huge, insulin sensitivity, liver regeneration, right? Liver regeneration with bile. So the gallbladder is a big piece of the puzzle. And you can see we've got a lot more things to cover there, but I won't actually talk about those. So you can just see how important it is because it's triggering nuclear DNA receptors, number one. Number two, membrane receptors. So energy expenditure, again, bile homeostasis, inflammation, intestinal mobility as well. Then liver regeneration, insulin sensitivity, glucose. You know, you can see how really important it is. And also down here with allergy and immune, memory, and anxiety. So, wow, the gallbladder is huge. And it all starts with correct stomach acid there. So, really important to understand all of that. Now, let's talk about one of the final things here, and I'll show you exactly how to test for all of this. Now, we have to fix intestinal permeability there. And these are the things that causes a leaky gut. So I've already spoken a little bit about that. So basically a shitty diet. So big food, big problem, sugars, processed foods, you know, they've got preservatives, which by very definition kill bacteria, the good bacteria in our gut, which isn't good. And alcohol, gluten, casein, and also lectins are big triggers diet-wise, and it all depends on your genes there. And then medications like corticosteroids there. So these steroids inhibit growth, repair, and recovery. So if you're on these corticosteroids, you want to work with a healthcare professional to get off them. Antibiotics are a big problem because they kill the healthy bacteria. And acids, again, like you've got that reflux, and it's normally because of low stomach acid. You take that, it makes it worse. Sure, it gets rid of the burn, but you're never fixing the problem. So you got this constant gut issues, anxiety, fatigue. And then the infections here from the bacteria like H. pylori, and I'll show you how to test for that. Then mental stress, because, you know, cortisols act like these corticosteroids there. So they inhibit growth, recovery, and repair, along with the catecholamines like norepinephrine and epinephrine as well. And when you got your hormones out of whack, like thyroid is absolutely huge for the gut, progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. If you've had some brain injury, and then autoimmune disease, and I've talked about that on food sensitivities. That video should be linked below. Intestinal inflammation, so it's a positive feedback loop where more leaky gut equals more leaky gut. Then glycosylated end products. So let's talk about the glycosylated end products. So what you might know is these glycosylated end products are also known as AGEs, advanced glycation end products. So they cause a lot of destruction in your whole body and organs. So like you can see what I'm circling around here, well, actually underlining there, but we're just going to focus in on the gut. You can also see alcohol is a bit of an issue there as well. So these AGEs are a big problem. So when scientists say something is causative, these advanced glycation end products there, factors in many degenerative diseases. AGEs have been linked to Alzheimer's, heart disease, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, wrinkles, and loss of skin elasticity, infertility, and more. So we don't want that to happen because as you can see here, these AGEs, dripping of the eyes, the crow's feet, the dark circles, discoloration, this jowl is more prominent, and your skin starts to sag. So we really want to take a handle and fix this issue. So this video here is from Dr. J, and it's absolutely huge to understand why we need to fix this problem. And the mainstream doctors say that 100 is okay, but it's really not, is it?
No, it's insane. It's completely insane. What they do in the medical system with sugar is they wait until you get full-blown diabetes before they like to complain about it, because that's when they can start selling drugs. It always goes back to the drug sales and how they're trying to manipulate things for that. But you don't want to wait until you get diabetes to pay attention to your blood sugar. You want to be optimized, right? That's the whole goal in all of this.
Yeah, so it's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry, so they're pretty happy with the way it is. On the screen there, this is a very important study because it was done over 22 years with healthy non-diabetic men. And there's about 2,000. So they tracked healthy, non-diabetic men over 2 years, and they found that if your fasting blood glucose is above 85 there, which for us Aussies is 4.7, or in European units there, had a significantly high mortality rate from cardiovascular disease. And that's because glucose induces oxidative stress, and it also triggers the formation in your blood of advanced glycation end products. And also it's in big food. So big food, big problems. If you think about it over a lifetime of exposure to this, like in the foods that you eat and also your blood sugar there, you just got a big load of these AGEs, accelerated aging, and all of those diseases that we just take as this is just what happens as we age. I don't think that it should happen. So if we eat the foods that don't contain them and we keep our blood sugar optimal, we're a long step in the right direction. So pretty important to understand right there. So, the final thing that I'll talk about with these AGEs, which is just blood sugar regulation, healthy blood sugar there. Reproductive toxicity. You've also got your skin aging there, renal, diabetes, Alzheimer's. There's a lot of things that are going on that's really detrimental to health. And as they've now shown there, people with insulin resistance, and you might have insulin resistance, you don't even know. This happened to me. So these AGEs, they are accelerated with insulin resistance, and they're going to tank your testosterone. So you're going to feel like shit, anxiety, depression, fatigue. So really need to take a handle on fixing that blood sugar. All right. So we've talked about everything that's going to cause that leaky gut right there. And we've also spoken about how important the gallbladder is. So let's talk about a few of the tests that we can do to make sure that we're, kicking ass. So the first thing you want to get a handle on is we got to be in rest and digest. So you got to ensure that you got enough choline in your diet to make enough acetylcholine to trigger rest and digest. So that also goes to mental stress. So when you got a lot of mental stress, which whether it's emotional stress or you got too much physical stress or chemical stress, then it's going to trigger the activation and release stress hormones. So that's going to really impede digestion. So you can see how that could be a big problem. So you have to dial in all of these things. So number one, we have to make sure we've got good stomach acid release. And as I mentioned there, that bicarb soda test is okay. And you can start to test to see if you've got low stomach acid there. But basically, you want to fill out the questionnaire to really know exactly where you are with digestion. And the second one is, are you digesting your carbohydrates, your starches, and your sugars there? And these are all the symptoms right there. And then also your fats. So I've spoken about all of these issues when you're not digesting your fats. So this can all show up. And it's all triggered by, stomach acid release. So proper stomach acid release is you're going to break down your proteins in a small amino acid so you can absorb them. And it's also going to trigger the pancreas to release enzymes so you can further digest your food. It's going to trigger the gallbladder to contract so you got good detox, you keep estrogen at healthy levels, and all of the benefits of a healthy gallbladder as I outlined right here. So, your nuclear receptors, your DNA receptors doing all of that heavy lifting, and then you got the membrane receptors there. So it's absolutely huge that we get digestion optimal. So if you've got any of those symptoms, what we have to look at is first the gut. Now, I did mention at the beginning of this that you can do a bicarb soda test, but that isn't always too accurate. The main way that you're going to understand is how you're digesting your food. So you eat a whole bunch of protein as a standalone for one meal, and you find that you're not digesting your proteins, you're burping, got a bit of flatulence there, as I mentioned. That can be a bit of an issue. Then you can also do a carbohydrate fiber test to see how you digest that. Then you can also do like a fat bomb to see how you're digesting your fats there. So if you've got any of those symptoms, then yeah, you've got an issue, and we have to further investigate that. Now, the next port of call, which is very serious, is to test to see if you've got a bit of gastritis. So you can have a bit of low gastritis, a bit of inflammation there. And on the next video, your GI map actually shows you this. So that's why it's very important to do a GI map. Or you can have very high gastritis. So the way that you want to test to see if you've got any inflammation in your stomach, your gut, which is gastritis, and this, make sure you work with a healthcare professional to do this, is what's called an apple cider vinegar challenge on an empty stomach there. So quite simply, you get 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, you down it, and if you get any burning, You've got an inflamed gut. It's going to irritate your gastric lining, and you never supplement HCl if that's the case. That's going to further destroy your gut. So if that's the case, you stop all apple cider vinegar because it's going to irritate the gut. Like coffee can do the same thing. So can alcohol really irritate gastritis. And then you need to spend about 4 to 6 weeks healing it. And then you take the apple cider challenge again. And if you get no burning, but you still got digestion issues, that's when you can start to supplement the HCl. So make sure you're working with a healthcare professional that knows what they're doing when you're going through all of these systems. And what is a very good supplement to take if you fail the apple cider vinegar challenge is this supplement here. So you got to think that the gut needs a few things. Number one, you've got to lower that inflammation. So this butyric acid there is something that your gut, your healthy gut bugs make, right? So they make this and it lowers inflammation. It's also a signaling molecule. So it's really important to understand that. And then you also need building materials to heal the gut. So things like L-glutamine and all this stuff here, it's been shown in the scientific literature to really help heal the gut. And you probably need to take this for 4 to 6 weeks, do the apple cider vinegar challenge again and see what happens. If you still got burning there, you've got really severe gastritis and you really need to work with a healthcare professional to correct that. Another great thing to do is take bone broth. Bone broth is very healing to the gut. It's got a lot of glycine and glutamate in it as well. It's got a lot of growth factors in it too. So that's another thing that you can also take because like if you got that gastritis and you're taking things that irritate it, like apple cider vinegar, HCl, alcohol, all those things, it's going to cause more distress and you can't repair it. So you're in an inflammatory state. So bone broth is another great tool that you can use. And let's summarize this into a very concise plan moving forward. So we've touched on everything, so I just want to walk you through the steps. So we know that chewing and also the motility through acetylcholine, I'll talk about where to get choline in a moment, and that if you've got a bit of gastritis, you really can't have enough stomach acid because your stomach is so inflamed. So that apple cider vinegar challenge is going to be key for you to understand whether you've got gastritis. Now, definitely work with a healthcare professional if that's the case, and it can take 4 to 6 weeks to correct that. And then we also talked about the gallbladder there, like the microvilla. It also helps you absorb the vitamins and minerals, amino acids. And of course, you've got to have proper electrolyte balance. Why? Because electrolytes are the electrical charge of all of your cells. The unfortunate truth is if you've got metabolic disease like insulin resistance, a bit of kidney issue, liver issues, you never really have proper electrolyte balance. And I'll talk about what to do on the next slide there. And it's not simply just drinking water, because if you're low on electrolytes and you drink water, you'll actually piss out more electrolytes. You're not replacing them. So you got to hydrate yourself with electrolytes. And that's a conversation for another video. So I know this gets tough and there's a lot involved in it. And that's what we've learned working with functional doctors, clinical nutritionists. And that's why I did my certificate in nutrition to get this right. So there should be a link below to book a call with me, and we can look at your exposome to see if you do have those metabolic issues that I just mentioned. We can also check out your genome, and we'll talk about the GI map on the next video. And I should have a video link below about food sensitivities, but if you want to book that call with me, we can show you how to get back to health in a very clear, concise path. And you'll know exactly what to do, no guesswork. So if you want to do that, book that call. So phase 2, as I mentioned there, phase 1 is all about digestion. And this is about the health of your intestinal barrier where you absorb a lot of these vitamins, minerals, and fats and proteins. So I've already spoken about this. A shitty diet, no good. And you could have genetic sensitivities and food sensitivities, which are destroying your gut. And if you're on any of these medications there, you certainly need to work with a functional healthcare professional to fix that issue. If you want more information on that, drop a comment below or reach out to me. We'll do a one-on-one call and I'll talk all about that. And of course, the infections, which I've already covered. And if you've got stress and anxiety in your life, you can't repair your guts. You've got to take care of that stress and anxiety. And again, with the exposome, we've got to check your hormones to see what's going on there. So we've got to do a full blood workup to find out where you could be potentially at with your thyroid, progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. And of course, if you've got brain injuries, you'd know about that one there. And blood sugar issues, if you're eating a shitty diet, intestinal inflammation, which we just covered, and also undiagnosed autoimmune disease. And that food sensitivity video that I got linked below will show you exactly what that means. So let's put this together. So choline, as we now know, triggers rest and digest, and it allows you to detox properly and sleep deeply, all of those things. So the question becomes, where do you get your choline sources? Well, you can get a lot from egg yolks, but some people have a sensitivity to egg yolks, and there's a lot in beef, liver, chicken liver. There's a bit in bacon, pork, salmon, beef, but there's not a lot in vegetables, unfortunately, for you plant-loving dudes out there or dudettes. So your option really is to supplement something called krill oil, because it's got about 400 milligrams of phosphatidylcholine in it in just one capsule. This is the one in particular. It's very high quality krill oil. It's also got things like astaxanthin, which is very protective of all of your cells, and that's incorporated in the cell membrane, so your cells are protected. Another supplement that I recommend when people have got a lot of gut issues is what's called liposomal glutathiones. This is a really good one because it's pretty cheap. It's only like 22 bucks Australian there. And it's got liposomal glutathione. It's that goes into your gut and lowers inflammation and oxidative stress and starts to allow your gut to heal. And it's also got 500 milligrams of phosphatidylcholine in it. It's also got the precursors to glutathione, hyaluronic acid, which is really good for gut health, and it's got collagen peptides in it there. So that backs on to what I said about the bone broth there. Now, an interesting fact, we've tested hundreds and hundreds of people with their genome, and this is a choline status. Now, mine in particular, I need 1,100 milligrams of choline per day, and the RDI is 450. So I'm on the extreme end there. Some people are, around about 450, 500. Some people like 700. We're just all over the shop. But if you do get too much choline month after month after month after month, that's a bad thing. So you don't want to overdo the choline there. So just be very mindful about that. And another really cool thing, I've spoken about methylation previously, that methylation is a very important part of detox. And a full 80% of methylation does two jobs. Job number one, makes creatine. You've probably heard of that supplement before. And also phosphatidylcholine. So choline comes in here to methylation, goes through these genes, turns into phosphatidylcholine. So if you supplement phosphatidylcholine and creatine, you unburden methylation by full 80%, which is pretty cool. But you really got to know what you're doing when it comes to supplementation. So work with a healthcare professional. And choline, rest and digest. So you can't be stress eating, rush eating, emotional eating. You've really got to have a good relationship with food, because that's what triggers rest and digest, not just for the stomach, but for the muscles, your tissues and organs, your skin, your hair, everything. And don't forget about detox. So when your liver does phase 1 through the P450 cytochromes, and then glucuronation, which is conjugation for phase 2, it dumps it into the colon to get rid of it through number 2s. But again, if your GI map is out, it's too high, it unpacks a lot of those toxins and estrogens and molds and alcohol, not alcohol, but heavy metals and food additives, and it goes back into circulation for round 2. So you can see how important choline certainly is. Now, another thing I'll talk about on the next video is what's called biofilms, because a lot of people have chronic infections. This is how it kind of plays out. You could have a UTI, urinary infection, gut issues as well, upper respiratory infections. So these pathogenic bacteria, planktonic bacteria, they make these little protective cocoons, and they keep building and building over months and months, and then they break free and they cause that infection. So you get reoccurring chronic infections every 2 to 6 months because you've got this issue ongoing. So there's a lot of supplements that you can use to fix that, and I don't recommend you take any of that until we talk about the GI map there. And that's really important to get rid of these biofilms. And if you follow the plan and you start detoxing properly, you start looking after your gut, not eating toxic foods, you get your vitamin and mineral status on point, then it'll clear out these biofilms and you won't have this pathogenic planktonic crap just bursting out and just causing all of these chronic infections. Now, here's part of the GI map that I'll talk about next week. And here's another part here. The point I want to make is we're all different. Some people have got high beta-glucuronidase, some have got low, some are in the butter zone. For an example, one dude that we helped, this was his protocol, 2 to 3 months, hunky-dory. This protocol here, he had pathogens, he had dysbiosis, inflammation. So that took like 6 months to correct. So we're all uniquely different. So legends, if you got any questions, drop in the comments below. I'm here to help. I want to show you how to get back in the game, and it starts in the gut. So if you can see that now and the whole north to south model, let me find the page. So digestion, that's where it starts. Healthy intestinal bacteria barrier, then a healthy microbiome. You're going to get back in the day, back in the game, and that's going to mitigate all of this dysfunction so you can work on the mindsets to get you back to the next level and rise up and kick ass under pressure, sleep deeply, pack on the muscle, drop the body fat, and get back into your prime. So that's what it's about. And again, if you've got any questions, drop in the comments below. More than happy to expand on anything that I've spoken about here today. Mark on, out.